So let's come back to this new faculty of consciousness that humans need to evolve. That you call it
Evolve into.
evolve into. The psychic consciousness. Does it have more knowledge? Does it have a greater...
No, again, a very important point.
Right.
When you say, does it have knowledge? We are talking in terms of mental
Divided.
consciousness.
Right.
Because mental consciousness acquires knowledge.
Right.
For the mental consciousness, it's very important to have knowledge.
Right.
Because a mental person,
Right.
take away his or her knowledge and she or he collapses.
Right.
I mean, finally you are what you know.
Right.
If you know nothing, you are
Useless.
useless, or you're not non-existent almost.
Right. Right.
So, but what is this knowledge? It's acquired knowledge.
Right.
You always have to acquire it. You have to
Right,
work for
right.
it. You have to read.
Right.
You have to listen, understand, whatever.
yes.
It's always acquired. But psychic consciousness is one with the very source of cosmic consciousness. All knowledge in the universe is its, because that's the stuff it's made of. It doesn't need to acquire knowledge. Psychic consciousness never has to acquire knowledge,
is knowledge.
because it is made up of knowledge itself.
It is knowing. It is a different kind of knowing.
So it is the if mental consciousness is made up of thought, because mental consciousness really it's all about thought.
Right.
The way you acquire knowledge, the way you process it, the way
Right.
you assimilate it, the way you express it, everything is in thought.
Right.
So let's say it's made up of the thought substance.
Right.
I'm being a bit abstract, but
Yes.
let's say it's made up of the thought substance. So the psychic consciousness is made up of love and oneness.
Right.
It is made up of a divine knowing. And this knowing is not acquired because it's not subject-object knowledge. This is, the psychic is conscious of its origin, of its source, which is the divine. Therefore, it derives directly from the divine. So what it needs to know comes to it from the all knowledge.
Right. Spontaneously.
Spontaneously, and then goes. I mean, it
As
doesn't.
needed.
The psychic doesn't preserve knowledge. It doesn't
Right.
need to remember. It doesn't. Whatever it needs to know at this
That moment.
particular moment or circumstance, the knowledge comes to it. Boom, does what it has to do and goes. So there is no need to go after knowledge,
Right.
to preserve knowledge in book forms or this form or that. The psychic will not need to preserve knowledge at all. So all your books and all digital formats of books and
Right.
everything, libraries, and everything will disappear. It
So-
will become redundant.
A caveat here. This psychic being that you're talking about, it's not the psychic that we go out and these people light candles and they give...
No. That's
the psychic.
Psychic is used, in the English language, you use psychic in that sense, but this is psychic in the original Latin sense.
Right. Greek.
In the original, Greek sense,
Right.
psychicus, In the
Psyche
Greek
is the
sense,
soul.
The psyche,
As the soul.
the inmost.
Right.
The psyche actually is the inmost.
Inmost.
So in that sense, psychic.
Not the-
Sri Aurobindo uses psychic in its original Greek sense, psyche.
Right. Not the
Inmost.
guys who project and give you...
No. Psychic
readings.
phenomena, you mean?
Yeah, they see the
No, psychic
spirits
phenomena
come.
is a completely different,
I just want to make sure we understand.
Absolutely. And it's a very important, very, very
People
important.
get
to understand.
confused.
So when I say psychic consciousness, everyone thinks that, or are you saying that we all have to become psychic in that sense? Like we say, that guy is psychic.
Right. Well, the psychic can have a bad connotation too.
Yeah. So no, we are not talking about that psychic.
Right. Okay.
And since you're when they use this word, we cannot, find a new word and replace it.
Well, this was, if I may use when he used the word, it was pre-psychic, if I may use it. Because then psychic became every phenomenon that you can't explain is psychic. And
Yes.
you have people who have created a business out. Every corner,
Yeah, I know.
There are
I've seen
people-
in New York, psychic.
every fourth
And you go down the
corner,
stairs,
then you
yes.
go down, they'll light up 4 candles and they'll tell
Right,
you
so-
your past life and your
Yes,
future
yes.
life.
So we are not
and-
talking about that.
We're not talking.
No.
Okay, good. And psyche is also not the mind, the psychology.
The psyche is the inmost consciousness, the soul, as it were.
The soul. So the psyche is your true soul, although the word soul has been destroyed too.
Which is why I'm not using the word soul. I'm using the word inmost. But yes, you can use the word soul for it.
Because now we have soul food and we have soul music
Yes,
and all that is emotions coming into.
Yes.
But that's not the real
No,
soul.
That's not the psychic we are talking about.
The soul issue that we are discussing here
Yes.
is that which is beyond all these, please appreciate the pun, all our concepts, all our ideas about the soul, even those have to be dropped because it's all mentally
So
created.
it's all that is mental. So you see, the mind again it loves to
Hoard.
acquire, hoard, and then drop,
Right.
give up. And
Right,
these are
right.
games the mind plays with itself.
Right.
I get this, I give that up, I drop this. But in the psychic consciousness, there's no need to drop anything at all because you're not carrying anything which is extraneous
Right.
to you. That's a very important distinction.
Right.
The psychic carries nothing with itself which is extraneous to itself. So in the mental consciousness, almost everything we carry with ourselves
Right.
is extraneous to us.
Right.
But in the psychic, actually you're carrying nothing. You are everything.
Right.
So what do you need to carry?
Another way I used to look at it was the mental or even your vital consciousness moves through has two movements or two magnets: fear and
Yes.
greed.
Yes, fear and greed. Yeah, rag, dvesha.
Right.
That which draws you towards itself and that which repels you.
Right.
Yes.
So the worlds that we have created, even our afterlife we have created, are based on
Yes.
our desire to have something amazing
Yes.
or our fear of something
Yeah,
that we
actually,
don't have.
afterlife, I would say, our inherent desire for continuity.
Right. It's a desire for continuity. Because we can't...
That's the root of all our stories about afterlives and reincarnations and all that, yes. Even our seeking for immortality is but that.
Right.
But the psychic has none of it because the psychic is completely conscious of its eternal origin in the divine. It
Right.
lives outside of time.
Right.
Because it lives outside of time, there's no question of a cessation. There's no question of anything coming to an end.
Right.
So continuity is redundant to the psychic. It is continuous. In the sense it's timeless.
Okay, so let's come back from the timeless to the time.
Yes.
The time, the age. Now, let's go back to the age of
The age
Sri
of Sri
Aurobindo,
Aurobindo.
because it's important
Yes.
to keep that in perspective. So you started, and I'm not being accusatory, you said that it is my personal realization of what he has brought to the table, if I may use an Americanism. So he brings it to the table, and we are not understanding what he's trying to tell us. Although his message is very simple, is to realize the divine within, the soul or the psychic within, and create a new faculty of consciousness, or be in a new faculty of consciousness. Is that reasonable?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked this because the moment we use these words and phrases, which we are using because otherwise we can't
Communicate.
this dialogue will not happen.
Right.
The moment you say we have to realize the divine and the psychic, then again, I have a feeling it falls apart.
Okay.
Because then that's the hallmark of the mental consciousness. It loves words and labels.
Right.
So then it'll say that, I need to realize the divine within.
Right.
But we have no idea, no blessed idea about the divine. Our highest and deepest ideas are still human
Yes.
and of the human.
Right.
We may say, we extrapolate that, we're using reason, and that's the divine, but it isn't. We have no idea about the divine. Therefore, all our confusions and perplexities and questions about the divine this, the divine that, how can the divine allow this, and how can this be if it's a divine creation, etc., stems from the basic fact that we have no idea about the divine.
Right.
Right? So, I tell you that you have to realize the divine within. What do you really understand? You don't understand a thing. But because, and this is again attributes of a mental consciousness, the mind always jumps 5 steps ahead of what it is. So if I say that to you, that you have to realize the divine, the Atma, the mind will always, it's already jumped ahead and says, oh yeah, of course I know, I realize, I understand that. I didn't understand what you're saying.
Right.
Yes, the mind has to realize the divine. It's understood nothing.
Right.
And the mind is very, very difficult for the mind, the thinking mind, to say that, wait, hang on, I don't understand.
Right.
The moment it says that, then it's a truly intelligent mind and a truly honest mind. An honest, intelligent mind will say, whether it says that or not, it knows inside that it doesn't understand. So now how do I understand the divine? All of them are talking about the divine. All our rishis and maharishis are talking about the divine, Brahma. But I don't understand.
Right.
Now the next step is to understand why I don't understand. Because if there is such a thing called the divine, then it has to be the all,
Right.
the unitive, the absolute. And that which is talking about the divine and trying to understand it is necessarily a part within the whole,
Right.
a relative reality, an aspect, a relative aspect of the absolute reality.
Right.
How will it understand the absolute? How will the relative ever understand the absolute? How will the part, or that which believes itself to be the part, ever understand the whole? It cannot. By its very nature, it cannot. So the function of the intelligent mind is just to understand that and give up. That giving up is the most important thing an intelligent mind can do once we come to this point. The moment the mind gives up, it's understood that these are great concepts, but I have no idea about it because I have no experience of it. And I don't know anyone who has experience of it. If somebody who has an experience of it, it's impossible for him or her to convey that experience to me. It cannot. He or she will be reduced to conveying that experience again, mentally, verbally, through thought. So once I understand that, the mind becomes quiet. Now, a mind that truly becomes quiet, and what do I mean when I say the mind becomes quiet, truly quiet? It means that it has understood its final limitations. That's when it becomes truly quiet. Like a dog keeps running, wants to do it, and finally realizes it can't do it. So it just goes to a corner and sits down and goes to sleep. Now it's at peace. So the mind is at peace. So when the mind becomes truly quiet and is at peace, that the first real understanding of what is within comes to it. And it comes remarkably without word, without thought. So when you receive that first understanding of what you're talking about, without words, without thoughts, without concepts, then you know that's the real thing. It's come to you. And you, fortunately, I'd say fortunately, advisedly, you can't talk about it because it's come to you wordlessly. You cannot put it into words unless you're still carrying the mental baggage with you, the compulsions of the mind. Then one will put it into words. But otherwise, one doesn't need to. One has understood, one has seen, and one is quiet. Yes, okay, it's there. So you become quieter and quieter, and you go deeper and deeper. And that's when whatever we are saying in the mental language comes. This is how the psychic consciousness works.
Something entirely new.
Entirely new. Yes, you're right. Something that hardly any of us has experienced or lived through. And even if some of us do come to that experience by the grace, we touch it, we get so excited that we fall back into words. Yes. We just cannot hold it without articulating it. To ourselves first, to begin with.
Right.
I cannot contain that kind of a highly refined, extremely subtle experience. Fleeting, subtle. Like if you don't know it, you don't even know it comes to you. Like I do not know how to explain the subtlety of it. And if you touch that, you can't, without putting it to words, you can't hold it, disappears. And the human mind, because of the ego principle in it, because of the force of the ego, the habits of the ego,
right,
we can't wait. If it has come to us, then we want more of it. Taker, you said.
Yes.
We want to take more.
Yes.
Or we want to preserve, or we want to keep it. And one of the stupidest habit of the human mind is, till I don't show it to others, I don't get it myself.
Right,
if I don't talk to you about what I've experienced, I somewhere feel I haven't experienced it myself. So because of all these things, even before we really get into that, we lose it because we fall right back into the mental consciousness.
Right.
But if we can hold ourselves in the psychic, it needs enormous patience. If we can do that, and even if it's the most fleeting experience, and you can be quite okay, however fleeting it is, it will come again. If it has come once, it will come again, and again, and again. And each time it comes, it's going to grow. It's going to grow in intensity. It's going to grow in its luminosity, in its presence. It's going to have more force, more power, more reality. So then you will lose interest in articulating. You will lose interest in understanding it in the mind. Because you know that by then you have understood that the thinking mind will never understand it anyway. So you've given up that habit of trying to understand what you're going through. So you wait. Then the psychic consciousness floods more and more into you. Then you're slowly transiting to that psychic consciousness.
So is that why you call it Vedanta, the end of knowing? Because your mind is constantly, mind is knowing, knows everything.
Absolutely.
And when it ends that knowing,
yes, then
that's
you've
when
come.
something new happens.
Yes. For me, when my own whatever I've experienced of that is what really brought the understanding of Vedanta to a completion for me. When for the first time, in all my honesty, I could say that I don't need Vedanta anymore. And I could, with all respect and humility, I could keep that aside and just look at Sri Aurobindo. That is the age of Sri Aurobindo, which you're writing on. So it's not going to be easy.
Which I'm writing without knowing.
So you're writing with an inner knowing, which the mind doesn't know.
Right.
No, most of the time, the mind doesn't know that it knows.
Right. But that's a different faculty.
Yes.
Okay, so coming back again from the timeless to time, and we've talked about the age of Sri Aurobindo.
Yes.
And I've tried to see him as someone who contributed much to humanity in terms of Swaraj, which means we should be free, we should be independent.
Yes.
Swadharma is to follow, like your
Yes.
dharma, follow your own
Right. Your own law of being.
or own that which holds you together.
Yes. In fact, I always feel Swadharma is your own deepest harmony.
Yes.
The harmony that holds your being together. That harmony which holds a symphony together.
Right.
Yes. Swadharma.
And then we talked about, how he integrated the various fields of knowledge, the disciplines
Yes.
of knowledge. And again, as we realize, this integration is not mental, because the moment you drop the knowing or the mental knowing,
Right.
that integration happens spontaneously.
Yes.
If we don't have to sit together and say, okay, let's integrate these different paths of wisdom, that integration is
Yes.
there already.
Yes, absolutely. It's that integration, that unity is already there. We just have to come to it.
Right.
It's like the formula of mathematics or physics.
Right.
It's already there.
Right.
The real nature of space and time is there embedded in space and time.
Right.
You just have to come to it.
Right. Okay, and then create.
Yeah.
And then
So
form
we can't say that Einstein wedded space and time.
He did not wed its space.
It was already, space and time was one. He saw it.
He just saw, and then he described it.
And then he
formulated
described it mathematically.
it. And then we validated it. We tested it.
Yes, precisely.
So it's almost like a scientific
Yes.
approach.
Yes. That oneness of being is there.
Right.
You see it
Right.
and you articulate it.
So this is the first, if we may, we have to put words into it. I cannot communicate with you wordlessly. Otherwise, this podcast would have no words. And everyone will sit and hear my
Silence.
unspoken words, and they'll all be mighty peeved after a while. So let's talk about transformation.
It's a podcast that will be over in about
No, we'll just
10
sit,
seconds.
We will sit for an hour and a half. Not
hour
saying
and a
anything.
half, all right.
No one spoke.
And no
Neither
one
the
heard.
guest. No one heard. Neither the guest nor the host, except the white chrysanthemum, if you remember that old haiku. So coming back to and the reason I bring the chrysanthemum is sometimes that flower is giving you a new psychic presence, soul presence, than you realize, and which is human beings tend some subconsciously connect to the flowers and give each other flowers because they speak a different language.
Yes.
And that kind of a language we need to develop within. But coming back to the spiritual, so the psychic, once we realize that there's a soul principle or the psychic principle, I'm sorry to put it in words, but that movement of dropping all knowledge, mental knowledge, we begin to come in touch with something entirely radically different.
Yes.
After that, does the process continue? Do I need to know any more? It'll just process it and will unveil itself in the stillness. Do I need to read any more of the book?
To my thinking, no.
No.
To my thinking, once you have come to the threshold of the psychic,
Right.
you don't need to know the next steps. You don't need to know about the spiritual or the supramental. You don't need to. Mind needs to, because the mind needs to have information.
Right.
But in the psychic consciousness, you don't need information anymore. So the psychic itself will unfold into its next steps and phases, or spiritual, supramental, whatever be, it'll unfold into that.
So Sri Aurobindo talks about the psychic birth or the transformation. Then he talks about a spiritual transformation.
Yes, he does. Yes.
What does that imply to you? You don't want to talk about it.
Seriously, it took me many years to stop thinking about it.
Right.
I used to think a lot about spiritual transformation, supramental, because it's very fascinating for the mind.
Right.
It took me a few years of discipline to not think about it anymore, till I began to understand that I don't understand any of it. I mean, by the grace of the divine, this little drop of the psychic has been given to me, and I think that's all I need. So I don't think about it anymore. It doesn't matter whether there is spiritual or supramental. I know there is because they have said so, but it really doesn't serve a purpose. Because again, as I said, I just need the key, and that key is the psychic.
So is this dropping of mental knowledge, is it akin to the Zen approach to the no mind, or the
Similar, yes. The Zen is more in the mental realm,
Right.
and their aim is to dismantle the conceptual thinking framework of the mind,
Right.
and that will release the mind into whatever it has to release it to.
Right.
So in that sense, yes.
Okay. But Zen doesn't talk about another principle, the soul
No,
principle.
it does not. It does not. Because the true Zen master would say that that's just another concept.
Right.
In fact, the true Zen master says even the Buddha is a concept.
Right.
So drop the Buddha. That's why the Zen master says drop the Buddha.
If you meet the Buddha on the road,
Kill him.
kill him. Right.
Yes, that's what they're saying. The concept of Buddha has to be killed for you to come anywhere close to the real Buddha in you. And the real Buddha is not outside the Shakyamuni.
Right.
The real Buddha is within as that wisdom,
Right.
which knows the emptiness of knowledge.
Because the Buddha word really means that which is awake.
Precisely, one who is awake, yes.
Yes. So to find
One
the
who's
Buddha,
aware.
yes.
Bodha, one who's
Bodha.
in awareness.
Okay, so let's take it to another mind level that I want to talk about, because Sri Aurobindo talks about different levels of mind.
Yes.
Higher mind, intuitive mind, illumined mind, and over mind.
Spiritual mind. No.
Right. So does that also become a concept we don't need to talk about?
See, once again, we have no idea about these ranges, because we are so much still in our thinking mind that whatever we think of the high ranges is still
It's still a
thinking.
Right.
Everything is mentalized. Let me use the word intellectualized. Everything is intellectualized. So once again, I would say the key here is silence of mind. Like the key here is the psychic, the key here is the silence of mind. Once the thinking mind has learned to be silent, the thinking mind has to learn to be silent.
Right.
Once it has learned to be silent, the mind becomes still. The vibrations of thought cease. You start moving beyond thought and word. That is when the mind opens up on its own to its next level. So now if you already have the concept that I will open up to the next level, which is the intuitive, that may or may not work. You may open directly to the spiritual mind. How do you know?
Right.
So that's why, again, the disadvantage of having concepts in the mind. I would rather have a silence which is pure in the sense there are no concepts in it.
Right.
So pure silence of the mind, and allow the mind to open up to its next level as naturally as a flower blooms in the sunlight. I don't think a flower needs conceptual framework to bloom. So why should the mind need a conceptual framework to bloom? So I would rather let it bloom in its own silence to its next range, whatever that may be.
Right.
And from what I've understood from Sri Aurobindo, it may open. You don't know what all has been prepared, and you may open straight to the spiritual mind. You may open straight to the overmind.
Right.
And once you do that, then all the other levels are already subsumed. So,
Right.
So it's best not to have any such knowledge. Therefore, knowledge is the helper, and knowledge is also the bar.
Right. So let's talk about this awareness in our practical life. And you have done that. You've worked with children.
Yes.
And where our westernized models, nothing against the West, westernized models of education are a mental development,
True.
sharpening
Yes.
of the mind, learn math, learn R through 3 R's, all needed. Science, humanities, history, geography, learn, grab. So you learn more, you're better, you score more, you become successful. So then greed comes in. Fear, you don't succeed, you won't have money. And so we go into that cycle. So our education system is like our mental consciousness, only a projection of our mental consciousness.
Yes.
Macaulay did a huge harm to humanity by creating this concept of creating, what did he call it? Babus, he said create people who will be assemblymen, who will be
efficient clerks.
Efficient clerks. That's what we are being created. And we don't realize it. All of us who are part of that education system are being made into cogs of a machinery of the state, of the society.
Yes.
And we don't realize it.
The consumerist machinery.
So, but if we take a look at this education system, we see the limitation not only of our mental awareness, but this whole entire apparatus that has been created, which does not really allow us. Even the apparatus of the church that has been created, the organized religion, unfortunately, is not allowing that truth to come out.
Yes.
So you have worked with children and trying to work with a more integral development of the mind and the vital and the body and the psychic. In your book, The Integral Education talks about it.
Yeah.
The silencing of the mind, the ability to become subtler, the ability to be sensitive, the ability to not acquire knowledge, to know without acquisition.
Yes, to know without acquisition. It's a beautiful phrase.
I have a lot of beautiful phrases.
To know without acquisition.
Just throwing them around like this. But to know without acquisition, seriously, I think you have used that word somewhere, that phrase. To trust our innate intelligence and our creativity. It's like a child discovering color and dance or movement or just digging through the soil. Not just limiting oneself to the sense, but touching something different, a different joy, a freedom, as it were. That is so critical to humanity today, if I may say so.
Yes.
Even though there is no
crisis.
crisis.
It is critical to humanity, yes.
But there is a crisis of not knowing what we already have, not knowing our own possibility. To me, that is a tragedy.
It is. I call it the tragedy of the written word.
Yes.
We have digitized intelligence and consciousness. Everything is... Can you live your life without the written word? You can't. We experience life through the filter of the written word.
And I'll tell you, as a physician, when I see my patients, 60, 70, 80, 90-year-old patients, of course, their bodies are getting ossified, bones, literally. But they're carrying the pain.
Yes.
The pain is there in those eyes. The failure to find the completest fulfillment, not having touched that. And of course, there is suffering, with physical suffering, but there's a deeper suffering, unacknowledged,
Yes.
unseen, not faced. And that is the tragedy of a human life. And we talked about
Yes.
abuse and PTSD, and we've talked about alcoholism, which are all symptoms of a deeper
So
problem.
these are characteristics of the mental mind, the thinking mind.
Right.
Yeah, because the thinking mind remembers. It has to remember the way thought collapses.
Right.
The psychic consciousness does not remember.
Right.
That would be the major difference.
Right.
So imagine a consciousness in which you carry no memory
Right.
of the past. There is no time, there is no past. So whatever pain or hurt comes to you disappears in that very moment.
Right. And you're not holding it like a baggage for
Cannot.
50
It disappears
years.
in the very moment.
80 years ago, I had this fall.
All distortions of human nature, sir, are
Right.
because of the memories that we carry from our childhood.
Right. And we hold on to them.
Yes, and the older we grow, the more distorted we get.
And
So in the psychic consciousness, all that will not happen.
even our vital, our energies get stuck.
They get stuck.
They just
yes,
move the same
yes,
way.
yes, because they keep going round and round the memory.
And they create a process of disease.
Yes.
Limitations in the cells. Immortality you talked about. We create our own mortality.
We do.
We make ourselves old because we are fixated on numbers and how old I am and how do I look to the world and how the world sees me, and that creates its own.
Yes. So birthday is so important for a mental being. You know, you celebrate your birthday actually. What an irony. Because with each year you're growing old. And in the psychic, there's no such concept of growing old. So what happy birthday? There's no birth. Every moment we are born,
Right.
every moment we are free.
Right.
That's how the psychic relates to it.
And then death. We don't know, with all our training,
Yes.
that there's a life beyond this life. Most of my patients, very few exceptions, cannot face death.
No,
They're
why
afraid.
just patience?
Human beings, of course. I'm just giving you a
most human
sample.
beings,
I'm
yes,
giving
yes.
you. This
I
is my
agree
sample.
with you. Most human beings.
They are, no matter how well-read, religious,
Yes, it doesn't matter.
they can't see
The shrinking is
shrinks.
inevitable.
The moment you say death, I know who a person is. I'm mentioning, okay, your time is up, and poof, everything collapses.
Shrinking, yeah.
There are very few who will say, I'm ready for it.
Yes.
And then the next step is of course, what you're talking about is this body
So
will...
that too, when you say you're ready for it, is a sort of a resignation to inevitability.
Mhm.
A philosophical acceptance and resignation. But again, in the psychic consciousness,
Right.
there is no death. So where's the question of resignation or acceptance?
Right.
Because you're completely conscious of your eternity. So smilingly, joyfully, you give up the body when the time comes. Not because you have resigned to fate or because there is a short afterlife. Nothing of that kind. It's just a perfect knowledge that is the very substance of your being, and joyfully you let go when the time comes to let go.
Right.
And when you're holding on to nothing, letting go is not so difficult.
So let's come back to the age of Sri Aurobindo.
Which is why I'm coming back repeatedly to the psychic consciousness, because for me that is the age of Sri Aurobindo. Homo psychicus is the age of Sri Aurobindo. The psychic is the age of Sri Aurobindo.
With the right understanding of the word psychic.
Yes.
The soul.
Yes.
The divine within. Would you say? The soul principle, would you call it? Because I know we've
If I
messed
go
up.
back to the mental, yes, I would call it the soul principle. But then it's well, yes, soul principle. But then we'll need to talk about, elaborate soul principle.
Yeah, it's been distorted significantly.
Completely distorted, yes. Again, because the mind distorts everything.
Right.
Because the mind has this arrogance, intellectual arrogance, that it attends and pretends. It attempts and pretends to know what it does not know and cannot know.
Right. With complete,
That's the arrogance of
with
the mind.
complete surety.
Arrogance of the mind.
Yeah.
I've heard experts holding forth on something you have absolutely no idea about.
Wow. When has that prevented us from talking about
It hasn't, never. So,
Yeah. Well,
so but we also understand that's the limitation of the thinking mind.
it is. So let me talk about this concept of Gnostic beings. Sri Aurobindo talks about
He
Gnostic
does,
beings.
yes.
What is a Gnostic being? Oh, you don't want to talk about it?
I can talk about it. It's like gnosis
Right.
is Vijnana, we use it in Sanskrit. I'm reluctant to talk about Gnostic being and gnosis because I'll have to use the word supramental to explain gnosis. The Gnostic being is one who has attained oneness, union, identity with gnosis, one who is embodying the gnosis. What is gnosis? Vijnana. What is Vijnana? The highest supramental knowledge. Now, what is the highest supramental knowledge? And then we go merrily into theory, because again, none of us can know it. But yes, one can throw hints from the writings of Sri Aurobindo. Gnostic being is one whose knowledge, his vision, knowledge, and execution of knowledge is simultaneous. No divisions anymore. One who has attained totality of being, totality, unity of truth consciousness. Gnosis is that which derives directly from truth consciousness. So right now we are living in a mental consciousness. So we are living in a fragmented, partial consciousness. We are living in a consciousness that keeps moving between complete falsehood to partial falsehoods to partial truths. Never complete truth, of course. So we are moving from darkness to darkness, getting glimpses and glimmers of light, and that's about all. But the Gnostic consciousness is one with truth consciousness. It is the truth consciousness. The Gnostic consciousness is the truth consciousness, which means it is completely conscious of truth, which means it is the truth. The truth expressing itself through mind is Gnostic consciousness. So the Gnostic being is one who's realized this. And that's about the maximum we can talk about it. Is about all that we can talk about.
So let's talk about the mental ability. We can talk about the mind.
Mind, yes, of
Let's say-
course.
So if I have an idea, if I think I have an idea, but something pops in. I don't know from where, but something pops in. I got to do this. Or I'm writing a poem and something just beautiful pops in.
Right.
But that's an idea.
That's an idea, yes.
I have to work on it.
Yes.
So I have to apply my will to it.
Yes.
I have to focus on it. Let's see how it goes. I have to try different things, different ramifications. Sometimes it may succeed. Sometimes it may gather good images, ideas around it. Or in business, okay, we've got to do something new. Let's open food banks for all our patients all our community that is malnourished. I want to feed. I want to create a situation where none in my community is malnourished. This is the idea pops in.
Right.
I get inspired. Now I put ideas together and I bring people in. Like, what do you think about this? Another brilliant idea of mine. And, then they say, okay, it's not going to happen. It's going to happen. We try it with different ways. And then finally, there is an execution. It starts happening. And there's time involved, energy involved. And then we create a food bank, which makes us happy. It has somehow reached what the original inspiration was, something beautiful where all of us in the community are nourished, healthy.
Yes.
Basic, fundamental,
Everything,
Maslow's approach, food for everyone, right? So there's a gap between the idea and the will and the execution. As Eliot says, between the idea and the act falls the shadow. Remember that. So between my idea and the act falls a shadow. That's how my mind works. But you're saying in the different awareness between the idea and the execution, there is no shadow.
Gnostic consciousness, the supramental consciousness is according to Sri Aurobindo, it's characterized by immediacy and simultaneity of that which comes to the mind, that which comes in vision to the mind, and that which is willed and executed and experienced, all happens at once.
Almost like a quantum physics.
Yes, but we'll
Vision.
only So you see, that's what I mean. That you can't think about
You
it.
can't
You
think
can't
about
think about how it works.
Because our mind is not capable of
So
that.
we can, sort of give examples
Right.
in extrapolation, but that is not the real thing.
Right.
So you see something. It's more, the closest we can come to it is, some part of it perhaps happens in the psychic consciousness. It's true that you feel that that being is in a bit of a suffering, and there's so much light in that being, and that suffering shouldn't be there. So the aspiration arises in you, then it shouldn't happen. And that aspiration, the thought, which is the aspiration that this shouldn't be, by its very expression becomes the fact. And before you know it, that suffering that you're aspiring to eliminate, that it shouldn't be, that aspiration, goes straight to the root of that suffering and already dissolves it. And it's a question of time, and the suffering will disappear. And probably you yourself don't know it, but something has happened. The aspiration, the volition, the will behind the aspiration. So the aspiration, the will behind the aspiration, and the fruition of that aspiration in reality, all that happens at the same moment, simultaneously. So that is something like what we are talking about here. What happens with supermental consciousness?
It's almost like in the ancient Indic literature, you would go to a rishi and say,
Yes.
I want this, and he would say, thus it is,
Yes,
right? And
yes,
thus it
and
is means
would
boom.
happen. And it would override all cosmic factors, all karmic factors, everything.
Right. Or like the Buddha, you go there and someone is in anguish, and boom, it goes away immediately.
Yes.
So healing, true healing
happens through
that we ascribe
true
to our...
healing, true wisdom, true love, true everything. Because it's the truth consciousness.
And healing, by the way, means to make whole.
Yes.
Right. So
yes.
suddenly you become whole again. Yes. So suddenly these, what we call miracles, start making a little sense.
Absolutely. It makes perfect sense.
Right. So the leper, Christ touches, and the leper, boom, gone. Leprosy is gone. There's no time.
But those are miracles.
Okay.
Because of the extraordinary nature of the being and the intervention of that being.
Right.
But here it is a fact of consciousness. Supramental consciousness is it's the consciousness itself. It's not a miracle. It's a higher order of nature. A higher order and a higher law of nature.
Okay.
But again, we cannot understand these things.
Mind cannot comprehend these things.
We are just extrapolating. We are imagining a bit, but thanks to the literature that we already have with us, what Sri Aurobindo has written, we can talk intelligibly about it. Right. Otherwise, it would be impossible to hold it in your mind.
So, okay, well, let's coming back to the age of Sri Aurobindo. And so let's talk about the practical things. Practical.
You don't give up, do you?
Well,
that's
a good part of the age of Sri Aurobindo. You don't give up. Humanity has to become better, different, radically different, right?
Yes.
So we don't give up. So let's talk about practical things. The world is in a crisis, although you say it's not in a crisis, but I see it as a crisis, so that's my reality.
Yeah, and I don't... For you, it's in crisis. For humanity, it is not. That's what I'm saying. And there are many views like that. For individuals, it may be true.
Right.
But for the collective, for the human race, everyone's so happy.
They're not
unhappy.
Happy. They're benumbed.
Well,
they are hallucinating.
So again, that's because you're saying that. Now you go to a person who's singing and dancing out there.
Right. That's
he or she is singing and dancing out there.
Which
and
is,
if you go and tell her you're hallucinating,
I don't
you'll not
say
only
that.
destroy that person's happiness, he or she will probably bang you on the head.
Right. But didn't Shaw say that it makes me very unhappy to see people happy when they have no right to be?
I'm not aware of that.
Brilliant. He says,
okay.
it pains me a lot when I see people happy. when they have no right to be.
Yeah, Shaw himself was never very happy. But it was a brilliant witticism. Brilliant witticism, yes.
Right. So, practically, what right now in the mental realm, divided, schizophrenic, diffracted,
mental consciousness,
us and them in the mental consciousness, we have to find something different, a different faculty. I'm saying that. Most people are not saying it.
Yes.
The mind has to realize its limitations because it's based on senses. It is based on its concepts. But as you know, the senses are very limited. We have very limited data coming from the world. And it analyzes limited data from one point and tries to conceive of a universe, but it doesn't have the ability, based on its limited faculty and data, to understand the universe. Right. But realistically, for those who want to understand, those who want to explore and question and inquire about this, who are in a crisis or may not be, you don't have to be.
Yes, I mean, you do
explore.
Not personally need to be in a crisis for you to be aware of a crisis.
Right. For those who are aware of an impending gathering danger of the extinction of human race, and hopefully I'm not dramatizing it, because it is there. It is now more and more becoming a reality. It's accelerating. We are hurtling in a train that doesn't have a station to stop at. What can we do? What should we do?
That is an important question. And fortunately, the answer is simple. We seek and find the change of consciousness within ourselves.
We become the change?
We become the change, yes. And the more we become the change we seek, the more that change manifests in the collective.
But changing myself, you think it'll change the world?
Oh, yes, of course.
How?
Absolutely. I mean, what you do deeply and intensely within yourself actually has a real effect on others. Because at the fundamental spiritual level, we are not separate. All of us are one. It's one single, as the mother always used to say, one single terrestrial body. There may be 5-6 bodies sitting here.
Right.
But if you go to the cellular level of the bodies, it's one single terrestrial body. At the level of the cells, if you can reduce yourself to the size of the cells and go and experience cells at the scale of the cells, you will not find bodies. You won't even find so many billions of cells. There's just one single cell throbbing, pulsating in a billion cells. There's only one terrestrial body, the only one body. The mother's experienced it. That she didn't say it. She experienced it as one single body. And the more you study physics of the body, the more you realize it's true. The physics of the body tells you there's no one body. At the cellular, molecular level, it's one single body, the cosmic body, the cosmos that has become the body of Earth. That Earth itself is the body. It's not the man, woman, animal, they're separate.
Right.
It's one single terrestrial body.
Right.
Manifesting as so many.
Yeah.
So if you understand that, and if you have a consciousness that can hold that in yourself, and that's a yogic training, of course, but if you can hold that within yourself, any change that you effectuate in this one unit of this one terrestrial body spreads throughout the terrestrial body.
Is that a concept or is that a reality?
Reality as Mother lived it. And her scale, of course, was terrestrial. We too live it, but many of us live it without knowing it, because our scale is not yet terrestrial. Actually, it is, but we are not conscious of the terrestriality, because our consciousness is not terrestrial. Our consciousness is still bound to the ego. And what is the ego? My frame of reference is actually, finally, the ego is my frame of reference. So as long as I have my frame of reference, then My whole consciousness is just that, my frame of reference. The moment that goes, you're terrestrial. You anyway were. Everyone is. Every single human being is that cosmic body.
That just reminds me of a beautiful
So,
description. Yes,
sorry,
go ahead.
I lose the
Yes,
thread.
yes.
The mother was once asked, what is the best way to help others?
Right.
She said, by bringing that change within yourself, you
Right.
will bring the change in all human beings. Have faith in that and know the science behind that. Yoga is the science behind that.
And it's similar to that Hawaiian way of healing, the Ho'oponopono, if you may have heard of it.
I've just heard of it from you, in fact.
Right.
Yes.
And the patients who were in a significantly high risk, high danger facility, mental issues, and the therapist who came realized, when he realized each patient's read through their charts, that as he connected with them, that their problems that he was seeing were actually his own issues. And all he did was work on his own issues, and he saw change happening in the patient.
Amazing. Yeah.
And slowly that most violent facility began settling down and became quiet until those patients could actually begin to enjoy themselves.
Amazing. Yeah.
And this was accomplished not by personal engagement and working in those patients, but working on himself, because he realized that when the engagement, the moment contact is happening, they're only reflecting what he already had, his own problems. So a deep cleansing.
So his was an extraordinary consciousness that could access that level.
And he has written about that. Several books have been written about this, which is, I found that fascinating. That also, I want to talk about that. I think the guy who wrote Anatomy of an Illness, I forget his name, I think it was Thomas. He wrote about how astronauts saw the Earth. Because suddenly when you're out, right now we're inside. Suddenly through an artifactual way, you're pulled out, and the astronauts described something beautiful, glowing in space.
Some of them had near mystical experiences.
Right. And finally he describes this Earth where everything is connected as a cell. He says, the only way I can explain the Earth where everything is interrelated, everything is moving
as a single cell.
As a single cell.
That's how mother experienced it. As one single throbbing cell.
Yeah.
And what you do at one little part of the cell spreads immediately to the entire cell.
So we shouldn't worry about being very small. And
no, none of us is small.
So little change here.
We are all cosmic. That's what we have to understand. That's what we have to live. That is the religion we have to live. That we are all cosmic.
So a change in an electron here can transform a galaxy? Is that what you're saying?
Quantum physics. Non-locality.
A pebble kicked at the shore.
The butterfly effect.
Yes, but it's... To me, it's like too fanciful, I want to see.
But this is all science, really.
Yeah, it is.
The butterfly effect is a very scientific phenomenon.
Yes. So the flutter of a butterfly's wings
can cause a hurricane
somewhere else.
Yes. There is a science behind it.
Yeah. Connected. Yes. Everything is connected. Or as Sri Aurobindo said,
the interconnectedness of being.
Right.
That is the only true religious vision. The interconnectedness and oneness of all existence, cosmic existence, the only true religious vision one can hold.
So there is hope for these dark times.
If one has heard of the psychic or knows of the psychic or even dreams of the psychic, aspires for the psychic, there is hope. Without the psychic, there is no hope. It's a question of time.
So if we can awaken that truth, that beauty, that love, or become silent enough for that love and that beauty to manifest.
Yes, then things will happen on their own. So when parents ask me what to do with their children, that's what I'd say. Just be quiet. Bring harmony into your environment, love and respect and trust and harmony, and things will change.
It's simple, very simple,
Very
and very
simple.
basic. And it starts with each one of us.
Each one
starts
of us.
with me.
Yes.
As we speak,
Yes.
it starts here and
And
now.
that's our response. Each of us has to bear that responsibility, because the knowledge is there in each of us that we are not isolated, we are not small. We are the whole, we are the cosmos. The more you believe in that, the more it grows in you.
Immediate effect, would you say?
Immediate effect, yes. I mean, your ego starts falling away. If you believe that you're cosmic, how long will you hold on to the ego? It's such a ridiculous and petty thing to hold on to after that. The moment you live in that consciousness, that and this is not mystical religious consciousness, this is pure science. Science will tell you that you are not separate, you're one in every which way. Molecular, atomic, molecular, cellular, biological, psychological, material, spiritual, of course, psychic, of course. We are one any which way you look at reality. So the moment you hold that as your, we call it Shraddha in Sanskrit. So if that is our Shraddha, that we are cosmic beings, each one of us, how long do you think the ego will survive after that? The ego just has no ground to stand on. It'll just fall flat. And not because you struggle against it or it's a big thing. It's a ridiculous thing. You start laughing at it. Hello.
You described ego as a very beautifully a few days ago when you said ego is a narrowing.
Yes, it's a shrinking. It's a narrowing.
It's a shrinking. And if you have that movement, you
Yes.
widen yourself.
Yes, the expansion, the other.
Expansion.
So there's only these two things, the shrinking,
Yes.
which is ego, and the expansion, which is divine. Expansion is divine. Brahma, Briha.
Briha is to grow.
Infinite expansion, to grow. So shrinking ego, expansion Brahma. Brahmagati.
When we grow, we widen,
That's
we are
Brahmagati.
that truth.
Yes, that's Brahmagati. We call it Brahmagati in Vedanta. Any movement of expansion is Brahmagati. And you don't have to wait for yoga or yogic realizations. It can be done on a moment-to-moment basis. You come across a person and there's something that moves, disturbs,
Shrinks.
is disturbed in you. There's a shrinking because of that, whatever the person, immediately, that person too is part of you. You may not be, something superficially might not be in harmony right now. But deep inside, even that person doesn't know who he or she is. It's just surface bubbles, and we are reacting to surface bubbles. So the moment you see that, all our reactions are to surface bubbles, deeper inside is that oneness of being. Immediately there is expansion. And so the habit of the most common human habit is to keep shrinking. And what does Vedanta do? It replaces this habit with the other habit of continuously expanding. You just have to replace one habit with another. Instead of shrinking, we expand.
Okay.
Which is a psychic movement, actually.
That's the
The
psychic
habit of
movement.
expansion is a psychic movement.
You're widening, you're embracing.
Yes. The moment you begin to realize that more often now, you remember that there was a time I used to shrink. People I didn't like and people, what they were doing, I could see through and I didn't like it. And now, no matter what happens and who these people are and what is happening around me, there's always an automatic widening. Something inside widens no matter what, and includes and widens and understands and goes deep. Then you know the psychic is at work in you.
You're not reacting. You don't punch them.
Yeah, so that doesn't happen. More and more when you see that is not happening in you, you know that psychic is coming to the front now. The psychic is taking over everything. Even your reactions are taken over by the psychic. Sometimes you can have that reaction. You put it that, and the moment you do that, the psychic takes over and says, instead of doing that, you go right through and say, Mother, take it. This that I see is imperfection. This too is yours. And instantly, the whole wrong movement which has made you react is offered to the supreme, to the divine. That is a psychic movement. Imagine if all of us live in that. What a world this will become.
We won't be punching each other, I
We
suppose.
won't be punching each other. Yeah.
Or if
We'll
we
be
do,
punching the air, perhaps. But we'll be happier beings at any rate.
right, wider,
We'll be wider. We'll be much
More
more in
open.
harmony with
embracing.
ourselves and with everything else.
Okay. Well, I'm not sure if we really accomplished everything I wanted to discuss about the age of Sri Aurobindo.
We'll have to have a 48-hour podcast then.
48 hours of
To start with.
to start with.
Yes.
Because I wanted to talk about problematic issues in the world, including
Maybe next time.
China, and including the Quad, and the Belt and Road Initiative, and the Silk Road. I guess we can discuss that next time. And what the U.S. needs to do to recover its glory. Or what
I
India
should be
needs to do.
interviewing on that next time.
Okay. Well, I thank you, sir, for
My pleasure.
not helping us
Eternal.
much with the with the book, The Age of Sri Aurobindo. But I think what you brought out is very important. This is not a religion.
Yes.
This is not evangelism. This is
So,
not
especially when you're writing a book like The Age of Sri Aurobindo, which the world will read.
right.
So that's why these are so important to understand.
It is beyond. It's an understanding that goes beyond
Yes.
our
And
limitations.
to concluding to one of the things I would like to say is what Mother once said about. She was asked how the work and the word of Sri Aurobindo will spread, and she said the work, Sri Aurobindo's work, will spread without his name, because it's the universal. Word.
If it is the universal thing, then we don't need any
The age
name.
of Sri Aurobindo will dawn upon the earth when.
The name is gone.
Yes, it's the age of a change of consciousness. The time when human beings collectively decide it's enough. It's time we change. It's time we grow up.
Or as the Tao says, the greatest king is one whose subjects do not even refer to the king. They think they're accomplishing everything themselves.
Yeah.
Okay, the greatest teacher is one whom we don't mention, and what he taught becomes a reality on its own. Well, thank you, sir. I suppose there is some hope for my book.
There is.
There
is.
I should
There-
remove his name. I just put the age.
absolutely is, and you may still call it the age of Sri Aurobindo, but and why ever not?
I'll call it The Age of Sri Aurobindo without Sri Aurobindo. Maybe that's the next. That's the title. Well, thank you. I appreciate you. A lot of insights, and more than just Sri Aurobindo, it's insights about ourselves, who we are, and what we can become, or what we secretly are, and that perhaps is why it is the age of Sri Aurobindo.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir, as
Thank
always, for talking about a book that doesn't exist.
And which soon shall, for its taking form.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, and we hope to discuss more books with you that haven't yet been written.